Good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast, and good morning for the rest of the U.S. that's joining us today. Thank you for taking some time to join us as we continue on with our FAQ series. Today we'll be speaking about Aeroseal as it applies in action on the job, at a facility, at a project site, you name it, the actual application occurring. So to this point, we've covered anything from, what makes a good project, the energy modeling, the field auditing, and now we're kind of wrapping that into, we're here, we're the day of, what's it look like? So today we got a couple guest speakers. We'll get to some introductions. The agenda today, we'll do some introductions. We got the commercial team roster, who's all going to be on site, what it looks like to mobilize a project, some preparations, the sealing, the actual event, and then how we close it out. We'll have some Q&A towards the end, so please use the questions box to the right on the little panel that you guys have. Ask them throughout the presentation as you see them, and we'll get to those at the end. As a couple housekeeping things, we'll have a survey at the end, so just to let us know how we're doing, if there's any feedback, anything that we can take back with us for future content, better support the industry and support you. We'll also be recording this, so about a couple hours afterwards, everybody will receive the recording who is on the call today. And otherwise, we can get into some introductions and get this thing started. So today, Jake Smith is joining us. He's the Director of Commercial Field Operations. He's been handling and building out some massive amounts of crews that we've got here to take on all these projects, not just national, but international. So I'll get it passed over to Jake for some words and we can get into it.
Hey everybody, how's everybody doing? I'm Jake Smith. Like Billy said, I'm the Director of Commercial Field Operations here at Aeroseal. I've been with the company for about 5 years. I've been in the industry for about 15 years. I did commercial HVAC installation and estimation before I came here. That's really about it with me. So I just want to talk about a little bit what it's going to look like, on your guys' projects. So first off, what's not mentioned in this process is what the webinar was, I believe, the last time, which was the auditors. So the auditors have already been there, contracts are signed. Now it's time for Aeroseal to actually start on the projects. So typically how we start a project off is there'll be a lot of communication up front in advance with our project manager that's assigned to it. And he will be working with either the customer representative, or if it's an ESCO, let's say, he'll work with the project manager of the ESCO firm. And they'll come together and we'll get a schedule in place. We have highlighted drawings that we'll give to the customer or to the project manager. Just a little pre-plan action of, hey, this is what it's going to look like once we get there. Then we'll mobilize a team to the site, and we'll mobilize a project manager. Will normally be there for the first week. Field superintendent, he'll be there periodically, either the first week or the second week. He'll show up and introduce himself, and then that runs the day-to-day operation. We have a foreman, and then the foreman will have anywhere between 3 and 5 technicians working for him, depending on the size of the project, maybe a little bit more. If it's a bigger project. We'll be bringing some equipment with us. So we'll be bringing a truck and a trailer. And inside the trailer, we'll have an Aeroseal machine. We'll have ladders. We'll have our foam blocking. We'll have scrubber fans, a generator, air compressor. There'll be several items in there, everything that we need to get the job completed in the time that we had scheduled with the customer. And then things needed at the project site. So what we ask our customer is there an area that we can park the truck and trailer, a safe area that it's not going to get tampered with, nobody's going to try to break in it, those kind of things. We also ask for a storage area inside the facility, if at all possible. A lot of times on the projects that we go to, we get mechanical rooms, so we're able to just go in the mechanical rooms. A lot of our work is performed there anyways, so we're able to just store our equipment and materials in the mechanical rooms. That way we don't have to keep entering and leaving the building to go to the trailer to get materials. And granted, there are definitely times that we do have to do that. We ask the customer or the PM for the ESCO to make sure that all rooms are accessible in the area where the ductwork is going to be affected. And the reason for that is when we're doing the seal, we want to make sure that the sealant isn't leaking out, say, above the ceiling and coming down in a room that's adjacent to where we're working at. So we like as much visibility as possible and as much access as possible, just to make sure that everything is going smooth for the client and we don't have any issues. And then it's the same, so customer representative or PM to allow for all the necessary access. So mobilization to a project, we begin by bringing in our gear to the designated storage area. So all of our tools, equipment, material, we would bring it into the area that was designated by the PM or the customer that will store it at. Obviously, if there isn't a storage area, then we'll be working out of our trailer, which is pretty important that if there's not a storage area inside the building, that there is somewhere local, pretty close to the facility that we can park the trailer at. Then we'll start the process by, setting up ladders. So we'll be looking at blueprints and drawings, and, we're looking at the ladders and making sure, hey, we double check them. We make sure they have protective feet on them. If we're in an area that requires that, we make sure there's nothing wrong with the ladders on a safety aspect. Then we start setting the ladders up, and we'll do that based off of where the diffusers or the VAVs are located at, in the ceiling. And then the guys will start placing ladders where they need them. Accounting for fire alarms. This is another thing that we'll do in the process of talking to the customer before we actually mobilize to the project. So with Aeroseal, during the sealing period, we need the fire alarms to be in test due to there may be any fogging issues, which could set the fire alarm off, or a duct detector. So we'll work with the customer beforehand and we'll say, hey, we're going to be sealing this area, this date. And we're going to need the fire alarms shut down and disabled between this time frame. As well as that, when we're in the facility, when we're looking at the ductwork to start sealing the ductwork, we'll actually remove any duct detectors that we find, just as a double check. We don't want any accidents to happen if somebody forgets to turn off the fire alarm, which that should never happen, but nobody's perfect. So we'll go in there. We always take those out if we can find them. If we can't find them, we'll ask the customer representation that's on site, hey, if they know where the duct detectors are at, and we'll take them out, we'll bag them, and then once the sealing process is over, we'll replace them. So preparing the ductwork for the seal event. So we talked about earlier, the technicians are going to go in there, they're going to set up the ladders to where they need them. The blocks that we use, they're compression fit foam and they're cut to fit. We cut them about a 1/2 inch bigger, and then we squeeze them in the opening so that they'll be an airtight seal. Technicians will place a large block at the air handling unit to isolate main ductwork, supply, makeup, air, return, whichever branch that we're working on that night. Then technicians will begin to block off the diffuser, VAVs, and or dual duct boxes in the facility. And in order to do that, we'll take off the flex runs and we'll put the block there. And if it's hard pipe, then we'll cut a small hole in the hard pipe and we'll place the block in there. And then after the sealing process is over, obviously we would put it back together we would patch the hole if we had to put a hole in it. The technicians will strategically place scrubber fans throughout the designated project site. They're high suction fans with HEPA filters to mitigate any fogging. So anything that were to come in the atmosphere, which is very minimal if it happens, those just pull it straight to those scrubber fans, so there won't be any lingering fog or anything like that. They'll just go straight into the scrubber fan. Then we'll do a final verification of blocking protocols and placement. So we're just double checking the drawings, making sure that everything got marked off on the drawings, so that we know, hey, every block is in place where it's supposed to be in place at. Then we have observations. Throughout the process, our trained technicians are scouting for any major mechanical concerns. Duct disconnections, VAV disconnections, any mechanical repairs needed. You know, we find a lot of things in these buildings. We'll find times where there used to be a VAV there and they tore the VAV out, but there's still a 8-inch or a 10-inch round opening in the ductwork, and it's just blowing high pressure air straight out of the main trunk line. So if we see instances like that on the project, we typically will just go ahead and take care of it. We'll capture the savings. So we'll do a pre-seal so that we know what it is and how much it's leaking, and then we'll cap it off so that the customer is able to see the difference on the seal certificate. With the blocks in place and ductwork isolated, the system is prepped. Aeroseal machine is placed at the location of seal. Extension cords run to each piece of equipment. Lay flat tubing is connected from the machine to the ductwork. Pre-seal process initiated. So we're just pressurizing the duct system. We're not using any sealant during this step. So we're going to pressurize it to verify the initial duct leakage. Serves as final verification mechanism. No large holes or disconnects. Blocking remains intact under pressure. So, and this is just our step of, this is a lot of times how we'll find that there are big mechanical repairs that are needed to be done or fixed, is we'll hook up and, you know, we got a pretty good feeling of, hey, it's this size duct run. There's, you know, this much linear footage of duct, and we'll have a pretty good feel for around what it should be leaking, you know, within reason. And if it's something that's way off the charts, that's when we kind of double down and we do a double check, and we'll go back through the sealing and make sure that we're not seeing air or hearing air come out of somewhere. And if we do find it, then that's when we'll go ahead and fix it. So now we've done all of we've mobilized to the project, we've started work, we've got all of our blocks in. So now we're ready to seal it. So we have everything hooked up. We're going to start the software. The technicians, during the time that we're actually running the seal, the technicians will walk around the site just to make sure that they don't smell anything, see anything, or hear anything out of the normal. And if they do, then we would immediately pause the software until we figure out, hey, this is what the problem is, or this is where the area of the concern is. And then we would work that area and until there's no concern left. During the seal process, while the technicians are walking around, the foreman monitors software and stops the sealing process upon completion. Then the flush cycle begins. So after the seal is complete, they need to flush out any residual sealant that's in the system, which is not very much at all. I mean, there are a couple, you know, 1/4-inch tubes that are pumping the sealant for us. So there's not very much sealant that's left in there. And it's kind of like a final push for us as well, because all of that sealant still goes in the ductwork. It's still doing what it's supposed to do. And we're just bringing it down a little bit tighter during this process. So here we have a little video that will play, and this is just going to give an example of what it looks like. And so a thing to note is you can see the different applications. So sometimes we're sealing on a rooftop, sometimes we're in a mechanical room like right here. And it just depends on ease of access, the best way for us to get to the main trunk line of the ductwork. Sometimes it's a rooftop unit, so we have to do it through the drops of the rooftop. And sometimes it's an air handling unit in a mechanical room, and we can easily access the trunk and we can put the machine and we can do our injection in the mechanical room. This is a really good clip here. I mean, it's the most accurate account of Aeroseal that I've seen. I've seen thousands of seal jobs that we've done. And I mean, this is exactly how the product works. And that would just be the technician walking around, making sure that he doesn't see anything going on in the facility. And then this is what our graph looks like while we're sealing, that he's removing blocks. Some of the projects we've done. So post-seal process and closeout, similar to pre-seal, the post-seal process verifies final leakage in the ductwork, compares the pre and post-seal numbers for improvement. The technicians will begin cleanup, so they'll have a breakdown of all the equipment and return to the storage area or the trailer. Removal of all blocking, reconnecting all the ductwork that they may have disconnected to place the blocks in, or patching the ductwork that they had to cut holes in. They're going to reconnect any duct detectors that we may have removed. They're just going to do a general cleanup and vacuum of the project site. You know, one thing that I really push to our guys on our team is our goal is always to have the facility cleaner than when we arrived. That's just something that we always try to do. So even if it's little dirt or debris on the floor that we know, hey, we didn't make it, we already have a vacuum out. There's no reason for us to not go the extra mile while we're there and take care of it. So project review with on-site client. So project manager will deliver all seal certificates along with the final report to the customer representative or the project manager for the ESCO. It'll take a little bit. It's not going to happen the same day that the project complete. It might be a week or so after the project's complete that we'll compile all of the information and put it together with the report. And then we'll submit that along with the seal certificates to the client. And then any questions or anything like that, we would review with them. Once the sealing process is done at the job site, we typically say that the system can be turned back on within 30 to 90 minutes. In many cases, this is the duration of our cleanup process. And I would say 99% of the time, by the time that we're done cleaning up and putting the system back together, that we're ready to turn on the system. And then after we turn on the system, everything's cleaned up, then we would shut off any lights and we would leave for the day.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Jake. So a lot of great information. The process, I know we'd kind of simplified it there. It is a pretty extravagant technology and everything else that comes along with it. But at this point, if anybody has questions, we're going to open it up. Please feel free again to use the questions box, and we'll start opening these up for Q&A. Pass off to Jake over here. So the first question, Jake, about how long does a project take? How long is a facility down for?
So it would depend on the size of the project. I mean, we do some projects where, you know, hey, it's one rooftop unit, and that project may take us, you know, a day to do. Other projects, there might be 60 air handler units in the facility, and that may take us a couple months. And typically that's where the scheduling really comes into play. Is we try to make sure we're realist and we know, hey, the customer can't shut down their operation for a month or 2 months to allow us to come in and work. So that's why a lot of our work is done off hours. So that way, once their last employee leaves, we can come in, we can do our work for the night. And then by the time they come back in the next day, everything's back on, everything's running. The employees don't even know that we were at the site.
Perfect. What's one of the most common things facility managers can do to facilitate a smooth duct sealing?
I mean, I would say the fire alarms is a big thing for us. Just making sure that, hey, we have a method in place. We know who controls the fire alarms. We'll be able to shut those off, no problem. And then just access, you know, making sure we have access to mechanical rooms or to above the ceiling. And then if there's any smoke detectors or any, you know, duct pressure sensors in the ductwork, if you know where those are at and you can point those out for us to save us a little bit of time instead of looking for them ourselves, you know, that's very helpful as well.
Okay. How far out should we plan for Aeroseal to be on site from initial proposal?
You know, that's a tough question. Obviously, it depends on our schedule here. You know, we like to always get customers in and knock the projects out in the most time effective manner possible. Right now, we're so busy that, you know, it may be a couple months out, where there's definitely times of the year where you could call and say, hey, we need you there in a week, and sometimes we're able to accommodate that. So it's really just a timing issue of how busy we are at the time.
Okay. How far is your team currently scheduled out?
So right now, we're looking for additional resources. So we're actually going to bring a couple more crews on as kind of our plan for the rest of this year, just because we're so scheduled out so far. Right now, we're pretty scheduled out all the way through the rest of this year. We may have like a week or two here or there, but 95% booked for the rest of the year, until probably around February right now.
Okay. What has been the most challenging prospect or project that you've had so far?
I mean, that's a difficult question. I mean, because I enjoy challenges. That's kind of where I like to live at, is in the midst of, you know, hard problems. But we've done a couple prisons, and, you know, those have a different level of planning that go into place for them, just because you're talking about moving inmates around, and there's a lot of pre-planning going into place for those projects. So I would say that's probably the most difficult, is just where you're in a high security, well, I wouldn't even say high security, because we do a lot of high security work. I would say you're in like a lockdown facility, like a prison, just because you can't run to the trailer to grab something that you forgot. It doesn't work that way. You have a lot of security around and a lot of process of leaving and entering a facility like that.
Okay. What are your current COVID-19 protocols?
So right now, I mean, we're following all of the government mandates. Actually, for our department, we actually have 99% of our guys are fully vaccinated. But we whatever the customer requests, right? So if the customer says, hey, it's 100% masks all the time, or hey, we want 100% vaccinated people here. I mean, we have projects like that right now where they're not letting anybody on the projects if they're not vaccinated. So we're adhering to whatever the customer request is. If you want us to come in there and just do what we normally do, which is follow CDC guidelines, then we'll do it that way. But if you have any additional requests or demands that you want us to come in there and, you want us to spray a cleaner on everything. I mean, we've had projects where every doorknob we touched, we had to spray it with a disinfector and clean the doorknob off. So it's pretty much at the customer's will is kind of how we operate.
Okay. We have a facility that can't shut down during the day. How does Aeroseal work around this?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I mean, we would schedule with the customer, hey, what are your general working hours? And then we would just find a window of, hey, your last employee is going to leave, or it'll be a skeleton crew maybe that stays there longer, and we'll get in there and we'll start work after hours. And then we'll make sure, hey, we shut everything off, we seal everything, and then we turn everything back on before the next morning. So that way it has a few hours to get back up to temp or down to temp, depending on the time of the year. And then that would just be a daily occurrence for the duration of the project.
And I guess a personal follow-up on that one, your crew works over the weekend as well?
I mean, we try to avoid that, but obviously there's always exceptions if it's a rush kind of project where it has to get done sooner. I mean, obviously there's costs associated with working that kind of overtime as well.
Okay. I think that brings us to the end of these questions. We'll get on to this last slide. If you guys have any other additional questions to bring it in, please type those and we'll get to them. Otherwise, so the last part in this series is November 4th. So we'll be going over that closeout process that Jake lightly touched on with passing of the certificates, the guarantee, any final warranties, any final concerns, what that wrap up of a project looks like, things to be mindful of, concerns, anything like that we can answer. And if you guys have any projects or anything, feel free to reach out to April. You guys have been following along, our audits are free. A lot of the process and the guidance that we can provide is pretty much complimentary. So if there's any questions, any concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to the team and they'll help you to the best of their abilities. And again, presentation's being recorded, so in a couple hours this recording will be out. There's a survey at the end of this just to let us know how we're doing. But otherwise, I don't see any questions that are coming in. So Jake, if you have any final words, I can pass it back to you and we can close this thing out.
Yeah, I mean, I just appreciate everybody's time, dedicating some time to watching this webinar and, giving Aeroseal a thought. We do a lot of work nationwide, worldwide for that matter. We have a lot of great results and, it's always our number one priority is to keep the customer first. And that's why, a lot of these, like the COVID questions, I mean, that's genuinely how we operate as a business, right? Is that we take the customers into consideration. So if there's any special requests or special time frames for us to do projects, we always try to accommodate that.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Jake. I will close this thing out. I hope everybody has a great rest of the day, great rest of the week, and hopefully we'll talk to you guys soon.